allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, presentations. First from administration and staff. We have a first grade astronomy presentation with Mrs. Chatwood and students.
No, I saw her earlier tonight though.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Catherine Chatwood, and these are some of my students from my first grade class this year. We have Kylie Wagernowski.
Hi, Kylie.
We have Mia Scott. Evan Ecker. Caleb Okino. Austin Schlegel. Sam Stewart. Trinity Chatwood. And Leo Bell. We are here today to share with you the recent unit culmination lesson on our study of astronomy. The topic of astronomy is part of the Common Core Learning Standards, Domain 6 of the English Language Arts Listening and Speaking portion of our curriculum. Before we begin, we wanted to thank Mrs. Lauren Carter for all her support with this lesson and for being so positive with not only my class, but with all of the students at the GLP. Thank you, Mrs. Carter. So enjoy.
We started off our lesson by watching a planet wrap video on our smartboard. It was called the Solar System Storybox, We Are the Planets. Our class acted out having the planets orbit around the sun. We reviewed things that we learned about each planet. I made this poster about Saturn and taught our class interesting facts about Saturn.
Nice.
And then we're going to pass their stuff around.
Yes.
All right.
These fun sticker sheets assess our knowledge about planet order. I can even spell all the planet names. Here is my 100% on my spelling test.
Nice.
Then Mrs. Chatwood took us into our space room for centers. At the first center, we learned about the historical significance of Apollo 11's first moon landing. We also got to play in moon sand with little astronauts. At Center 2, we read lots of books about astronomy. At Center 3, we used iPads to play Leo's Pad Episode 2. This app let us build rocket ships and mix rocket fuel. At Center 4, we listened to the book on tape monkey and the rocket. The monkey's name in the book was Sam, just like me. The last center was space puzzles. They were even too hard, super hard challenge puzzles.
Nice.
Then we all sampled astronaut ice cream. Everyone in track line stopped down and the ice cream. Here is some astronaut ice cream for you to try.
Oh. So we didn't really need the noise.
Go ahead, try it, it's not too bad.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Next, Mrs. Chatwood took everyone in a rocket for the planetarium show. My mom, Dad, and I made the rocket with a tent, cardboard, a flag, and over 150 feet of tinfoil. Inside the rocket, we saw slides of the planets, space shuttles, constellations, and stars. I was the commander of the rocket. It was really cool. Mrs. Chatwood bought our class a real star to locate to the left of the Big Dipper. Every time we look at the night sky, we will remember to work hard and believe in ourselves.
And there's just a quick little PowerPoint if you want to see some pictures. The students, the content that we learned. There's some pictures.
Can you back up? Oh, nice. Because I know you built that. You went by it way too fast. Can you talk? No.
There we go.
Actually, I know Catherine will not do enough credit to that.
Which is why I wanted you to back up.
Okay.
Yes, you can.
She made that?
And I know she's
Really?
going to be way too humble when she talks about it.
Wow.
So you're going to talk, Mrs. Carter?
Unless you want to. I know she won't, so.
Yeah.
Well, every year I try to make a special room for the kids. And this year we just had a lot of fun. We learned a lot. So there we go.
Oh, wow. There.
There you can kind of see it there. It was in the center of the room. And then at the end of the lesson, when we went inside the rocket, we turned off all the lights. The kids were all wearing black. And then that planetarium that Leo had that was coming around. Yeah, that one. We lit it up and we saw slides of the space shuttles and the planets and talked about that. And then the constellations were super cool. They were everywhere. And then the stars came up. There were 3 different
And so,
sections of that.
so I have a question. You guys didn't see this before, did you? Was it a surprise? She keeps it a surprise. I heard that.
She doesn't let me in.
She doesn't even let Mrs. Carter in.
So I guess I'm going to tell you a little bit about Mrs. Chatwood because she talks about all of this, but what she fails to mention is, I always say she's a little hidden secret at the GLP. I'm very, very fortunate to have teachers who have truly embraced the Common Core learning standards. But what they've done is they've taken them and they've taken very rigorous learning for primary students and made them memorable experiences like this. So examples like students having Toga Day after they've learned all about Greece at a 2nd grade level, or examples like this where Catherine Chatwood not only this year built a planetarium on her own where she buys all of those materials out of her own pocket. She comes in weekend after weekend after weekend with her little daughter and her husband and build and build and build and don't let me in the room to see what they're building, knowing that it's going to be not only a planetarium for her students but to share with the entire building when she's done, and shares all of those learning resources. The year before, Another unit they have to learn in first grade is about Egypt, and she built an entire tomb that the students were able to go into and see King Tut's tomb. So it's very authentic learning. And again, she purchases those materials herself, builds and constructs. And her husband is just a saint because he's hammering and building and constructing a tomb as authentic as it can be for these students. So it was great that they got to share their learning experience with their teacher. She adopted a star for them so that they'll always have that memory, but then she shares it with the entire building so that the entire school can go visit it. So it's really a remarkable experience for her students, but she really is one remarkable teacher at the GLP.
Thank you and have a great night.
Great job, guys. That's not easy to talk in front of these people. I'm very, very impressed. And they're gone that fast.
Great. Okay, next we have Mrs. Roberts for a music presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening, Sarah.
My name is Sarah Roberts. I am the junior senior high school band director, and I'd just like to present a little bit about Music in Our Schools Month. This is actually NAFME's 30th anniversary of celebrating Music in Our Schools Month nationally. NAFME is the National Association for Music Education, and it is the national organization that we all fall under. And it's really important to honor our students that have gone above and beyond in the music field in our area. This is at the local, the county, and at the state level. So I'd just like to briefly kind of explain to you what opportunities students have, and then we're going to recognize some of the ones that are here. So the first option, I always like to associate these with sports because it seems like people understand that a little bit better, is ECMEA, which is our Erie County organization. And that's kind of like an honors ensemble at the ECIC level, as we would say. So students in 5th through 12th grade can participate. Instrumental students do a solo with scales and sight reading, and vocal students have different requirements depending on their grade level. The selection process then is that all of the sheets that the students get completed by judges are then ranked, and then the students are selected for that ensemble. I'm not going to read this slide because you guys, everyone can read. So.
We hope.
All right. Next, this at least I think. The first graders did a great job. So
They did.
all the students that are selected then meet for a festival. So the elementary festival, which is the 5th and the 6th graders, meet on 2 separate weekends in March. And they perform a concert on Saturday, and then the junior high festival was actually last weekend, and that was held at Iroquois. I had to think about that one. And then the senior high festival is actually held at UB, and that's this weekend. So I just have a list. If any of the ECMEA students are here that participated, please come up, or that are participating at any level. So this is the whole list of elementary students. The list of junior high students, one of which was Alan Henry. He participated in full orchestra. He is a band student, though he plays the steel. And then for senior high, we have, oh, sorry, I forgot Gavin. Gavin played bass in junior high as well. We have Alex Bianchi, who is a tuba player, who is in orchestra. Yes. So we are very, very excited to have them selected. Lauren and Holly both participate in Southtown's Youth Orchestra and have a huge dress rehearsal because their big concert is on Sunday. So they are very sad that they couldn't be here. And then RJ and Sarah was the first alternate for jazz. The next level, which I like to think of as the sectionals of honors ensembles, is the NISMA Area All-State Festival. It is for only 7th through 12th grade. The elementary students don't participate in this. It is Erie, Niagara, Chautauqua, and Cattaraugus counties, so it's a bigger group of students that are being pooled. All the students participate in the solo festival in the spring, and then are selected in the fall by the same kind of criteria. It depends on the grade that the students score a ranking list. And then those students all meet in November for a junior high 2-day festival in Akron or a 2-day festival at SUNY Fredonia. And those are the students from all the different groups. They have intensive rehearsals for 2 days and then put on a concert on Saturday. So the students that were in that group are as follows. So Gavin and Alex and Aaron, you guys can come up. So we had Gavin Hill again for bass. Alex Bianchi was an alternate, and Aaron Carpenter was in band. And then we actually have a conference all-state. This is like the states of band or orchestra or chorus. It is a very, very rigorous process. Only students in 10th and 11th grade are eligible to even audition. You have to perform a level 6 solo, which is the highest NISMA level that you can do. It also has to be accompanied. These students have recommendation forms that are completed by their teachers. They're graded by higher ranked judges at the festival. The judges then have to rank the students according to their instrument, and then our recommendations, the students' forms, and the rankings all go to the state, and the state kind of selects the groups. So just a quick statistic. So this year alone, last spring, there were 6,521 students that performed auditions. Only 2,736 were even recommended to be accepted, and only 878 were selected. These students then all meet in early December for an actual 4-day festival. They go on Thursday night, and then they have their concert on Sunday. They are in Rochester, so it's people from all over the state. It is very, very difficult to get into. Our last student from Eden that participated was Abby Plotz, who we've heard a lot of good things about lately. She's a senior in college right now.
She's here today.
Yeah, I heard she was going to. I saw that today. So she actually was the last student that went, and she went for chorus. The last band student that we had was at least 10 or 12 years ago. So this year we actually had Lauren Henning, who I mentioned earlier is at an SYO rehearsal tonight, couldn't be here. But she made symphonic band as an 11th grader, so that was a great accomplishment. We were able to honor her and all the students that were selected for All County or even that auditioned last night at our band concert, and they're going to do the same thing at the chorus and orchestra concert. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to share with you all the wonderful things that our students are doing, and we want to thank you so much for all of your support of the music program here at Eden.
Good job. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming, the students, and Sarah, thank you for doing that, because I know it's Music Appreciation Month. Thank you.
Okay, the next presentation is a cost analysis on the capital project.
Hi, guys. Hi, Sean.
Good evening.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, how are you? The remote.
So if I could just do introductions again. Mike McCarthy from Young and Wright. He's the project director. If you just raise your hand so they know who you are. Sean Wright from Young and Wright, the architect. Tom Caruso from Campus Construction RCM. So thank you all for coming tonight.
You guys run that. So good evening. 2 weeks ago when we were here, we were asked to provide some cost estimating across several options that were derived, worked through, developed on the Academic Organizational Committee. Those meetings occurred in January 7th, the 14th, and then again in February 3rd or 4th, first week. We took a look at this and worked with Young and Wright, and we issued a report to the board and to the administration. This is a draft report. The first page is this is the document, in case anybody understands what we're talking about. It is dated March 10th, and it is from campus and Young and Wright. The of importance is a couple of bullets. I'll walk you through the report before we get to that one, but that's okay. You can leave that up. The ideas, information, and space planning solution contained in the report are conceptual in nature. While the costs reflect concepts, they are based upon real costs from K-12 education work recently completed throughout Western and Central New York. Necessary contingencies, inflation, market conditions, and incidental costs have been projected in the cost numbers. There's also an executive summary, and then there is a section that is suppositions that you're seeing on the screen right now. This is part of, in section 2, if anybody is following. The suppositions are the last page of section 2. It tells you just a little bit, again, about the process we went through in January, February. It's telling you the contingencies that we are projecting in the estimates. And then the next sheet. And then it's also then outlining the timeline that what we have been discussing since December. This is the timeline that the project requires if we are going to maintain a process through the development of a capital project with a vote in December of 15. And of importance is the third bullet down, or fourth bullet down, is BOE presentation, and that we are looking for direction tonight of which way the board would like us to go. Having said that, the next slide is the summary of the cost estimating and of conceptual cost estimating. What we did was we were going to look at 2, 3, and 4, but once we got in at our estimating department, once we were able to determine the scope of work working with Young and Wright, it made sense to do all 5. And where you're seeing are the 5 options as developed by the AOC. And the first option 1 would be a pre-K through 4th grade level at GLP, a 5th to 8th grade level at Eden Elementary, and then 9-12 at the junior senior high school. And you'll see the associated cost of about $21 million associated with reorganization of that option. Now, we used a baseline of that construction would start in spring of 17, and you can see more of the detail. I'm not going to go into very much detail throughout the report. It's all there in the following sections. After this, 3 through 7 are all the specific detailed of the estimating and the floor plans associated with each option. If there's any questions, I'll gladly get into it with you, but we're not going to go through each individual one. Option 1 is the most expensive. Why is it the most expensive? Is because you're virtually loading up 2 buildings with 2 different programs. Eden Elementary becomes your middle school. It is requiring all the middle school functions. It requires total revamping of your kitchen and cafeteria, et cetera, et cetera. Each program is touched if we move a middle school model back to Eden Elementary. That doesn't necessarily happen if you move 6th grade, 7th, 8th into this building because you're already set up for it. So you'll see there is a major cost difference on both GLP and Eden Elementary when you fully load those buildings up with students. Option 2 is the least expensive of all of them, and we sensed that that was the least expensive. Why? Is because we knew we were only moving one grade level. It is the model, the middle school model of moving 6th grade to the middle, junior senior high school, having 6, 7, 8, and 9, 12 at this building, and then keeping the existing configurations at your other 2 buildings. There's not any significant associated with the academics. There's not a significant amount of work in relationship to the other options with option 2. Option 3 is, again, once we studied, was minimizing the use of GLP and then loading up Eden Elementary again. You'll see there's the cost is almost the same as option 1 for Eden Elementary under option 3. There's major more work to be done at the 612 building, and option 3 modestly is in between the low and the high from a cost perspective. Option 4 closes GLP. There's a cost associated with closing, with decommissioning. That's why you'll see some money under the closed at GLP. And then it loads up your other 2 buildings. Again, major cost at Eden Elementary and the junior senior high school. And then the last option was, what do we need to do if we just maintain your existing configuration? What are the basics that we have to do? And you see that cost came in about $6 million and whatever the difference is, 6.6. So it is, what we have suggested is that it makes sense from our perspective that the best use, if indeed you want to create a 6th grade model and make a plan for the next 5 to 10 years with GLP, it makes sense from our perspective, speaking for campus, and I think we can speak for Young and Wright, it makes sense for you guys to consider option 2.
Question, on option 5, to do nothing, basically we keep everything the same, that almost $7 million is to get buildings into spec, fix the issues with it, or to make modifications to enhance the buildings for education? I mean, that's almost $7 million to make no changes whatsoever. So I'm assuming that $7 million is either to fix problems with the existing buildings and or make enhancements. What is that $7 million for?
In option 5, I'm looking now at tab 7. In GLP, there's $2.4 million of construction cost. It would be renovation of the pre-K rooms, 5,544 square feet of it. The second item, GLP.
Can I stop you there?
Sure.
Why would we need to renovate if they're working okay today? Or are they not working okay today?
Some of this information here may be coming from the building condition survey, which I'll add to this, is not a part of, it's not supposed to be a part of these numbers, although we may have some of that work included in here, okay? As far as things that are starting to cross over, I think we mentioned this in our last meeting, that there are certain things that will cross over and cross each other out as we're looking at some of those things. There's also a lack of secure entranceways in some of these buildings. Some of the other things that have been identified as parts of the project may be showing up in what you're seeing here.
I'm just wondering why almost $7 million to keep the buildings the same.
It is
understanding the impact of that.
It certainly, with the first item, it would be to upgrade and do a major changeover for that space. It's not necessarily the same for all the other spaces, although it's your option if you wanted to maintain the existing toilet rooms. We have in this the price. It would be comparable to what we were doing, and again, we try to keep apples to apples comparison through the other options. In option 1, if you loaded up the building, you'd have to renovate the 6 toilet rooms. So we, in this option, kept renovation of the 6 toilet rooms. So the purpose of this exercise was not to tell you scope of work. Okay, the purpose of this exercise was to compare the cost. You asked us what it would be, what the cost would be for each option.
What option 5 was to do nothing, so there should be no cost, right? If that's the way you're looking at it.
You could do no cost, you could not do a capital project.
We don't have to do it.
You could leave exist.
There's no itemization of the charges. So option 5 with no change, it should have been 0.
There's no programming changes in your buildings in option 5. The buildings stay programmed as is. That doesn't eliminate the fact that there's work that we're looking at in various different levels in each of these buildings.
So let's use the example of the main office. I think that's a really good one, because it follows through on all 5 options.
Right. Part of each of these options has to do with reconfiguring main offices in order to provide secure entranceways. Some of the other things are the classroom upgrades. You mentioned the GLP. One of the things we talked about at our last buildings ITBC meeting was the fact that there's only one power outlet in each of those classrooms. So I guess some of these things we've looked at as things that are a given, that they'll be addressed whether there's any work being done to change the program in the building or if the programming stays the same. These options are really here to identify the difference in programming and some of the costs that are associated specifically to the programming changes in the building.
Do these costs reflect current deficiencies in the buildings that we have today due to structural issues or repair or maintenance issues? Does any of these costs are reflected in this?
I would say there's some crossover, but no, I don't think that all of the items that we've been discussing as part of the ITBC meetings, which we just held our second one this past Saturday, are not all reflected in these costs. These costs
could go higher based upon repairs that we need to have in these facilities.
Yes.
Correct. This is strictly looking at the academics. If you change your programs or move your programs or kept your programs the same, we still have to deal with roofs and boilers and pipe and wire on all the other necessities to operate your buildings. But in the square footage numbers of each of these, we would have that included, those costs. So that's what Sean's saying, we're going to have some crossover. That is why we are studying now all this information at the same time. The IT, the building condition survey, the APES request, all your basic infrastructures, all are going together behind the scenes at the same time.
Basically, I was trying to compare, if you took the $6,631,000 off of the $10,101,000 on the option 2, basically you're doing the same thing, we're just adding $4 million onto option 2. Is that correct or no? Because GLP is getting the same amount done in option 2 as they are in option 5.
That could very well exactly be. That's why we tried to do apples to apples comparisons. It is. The major difference with option 2 is at the high school, is where we're moving 6th grade, meaning we probably have a middle school office. Means we probably have to build a 6th, 7th grade science room. We have to do an entranceway, et cetera, et cetera. So those type of things make sense, and they will stay the same. You'll see when the programs stay the same between the options.
Thank you.
So a question that I have is, the moment that we declare that we're going to do a capital project, this concept from SED of health and safety comes forward. Can you talk about that for a minute? What does that actually mean? What can we not do? What do we have to do just because we're touching space?
Right. There are a series of items that when we do the building condition survey for the school building, depending on their condition, the State Education Department will flag as items that they consider to be health, safety, welfare items. When you go forward with a capital improvement project, they're going to compare the work that you're proposing to do in the buildings to that list. And if they believe that there are things that are being left out that should be addressed, or things that there are sometimes things that if you're not doing any work in an area and you have something that should be upgraded but is not necessarily a health hazard, they will allow you to bypass it under that current project with a letter, usually from the district. But for the most part, they would like you to address those items first and foremost. And part of their idea is that if you're doing the project, you know you have health, safety, welfare concerns, you should address those things as part of the capital project. So there is a baseline, and that's one of the things we're working with the ITBC committee, is identifying and putting those items near the top of the list of things to be addressed, anything that has a health, safety, welfare attached to it.
So let me just make sure that I'm correct on this one. So if you were to touch in this building the art room or the tech room, air quality is going to come forward to
Absolutely.
SED right away.
Ventilation and proper ventilation for those things, because a lot of the equipment that you have has outdated ventilation systems. So yes.
Okay.
I do have another question. Do we know if we have any asbestos, or are we anticipating any type of additional costs on asbestos removal?
Yes, you do have asbestos. Yes, you have a asbestos management system in place. How you
Is it in here?
Yes, you have it. You have it in. It was used through construction right up, believe it or not, right up into the late 70s and early 80s. Until all the laws finally kicked in. But there's a report that's called a HERA report that your facilities department maintains, and they have a pretty good grasp on where it is and what it is. Okay. But yet, you will see many times in here when we price something, for instance, if it's replace a ceiling, you know, the library at Eden Elementary School, if they want to replace the ceiling, for example, we take one look at it and we said, okay, that's been there for a long period of time, and the tile may not be hot, may not be asbestos, but the mastic behind it that holds it in place will be. So the process is that we'll anticipate in our pricing that it might be $11 or $12 a square foot to replace that tile with the asbestos work, because it has to be done under containment. So we would cover that cost in here.
Okay.
And then once we were starting design, if that work stayed in the project, then the architects would ask a consultant to come in and test it and find out for sure. And if it is hot, then we have to bid it out under containment. If it is not, then great, we can use the money for something else for the district.
And Sean made a really good point of that at the ITBC meeting on Saturday, that while these contingent costs are embedded in now at a particular percentage, that they go down over time as you learn more. Can you just talk about that some?
Yeah, one of the questions that came up at the meeting on Saturday had to do with there were percentages that are added to the overall cost of the project at the end for contingencies, incidentals, things like that. And as we continue to refine the project and go through the actual design process, go through the testing process, we're able to reduce those contingencies from the budget, because we'll know more about the actual condition of the things that are in the building. Once our people come through and do the testing, give us the reports so that we know what has to be removed under abatement protocol and what doesn't. So.
I have one more issue that I haven't really made very important, but when you drive up to the school, no one can identify the front
Yes.
door.
There's the front of the school.
And I don't see it on here. Can you elaborate on that?
It is part of it, whether or not it's a specific line item in here. When we looked at option 2, that was one of the things that we put in there, and we kind of showed it in our plans, because wayfinding in this building will have to be addressed in order to break this into 2 separate school buildings.
And the other thing is the directional of coming in and out of the driveways. It's just very confusing. Mm-hmm. Is that in here?
Yes, it is. It's part of our plan to have it as a part of the project. Let's put it that way.
I'd like to make a motion upon the recommendation of the superintendent that the board approves option 2 as presented by the AOC, which would reconfigure the junior-senior high school to a middle school and a high school, and keep the GLP school open with some lease space.
Second. Discussion? Yeah, I have a discussion. I mean, given the fact that we don't know the total cost yet, because we don't know, possibly the boiler needs to be replaced, or, I mean, they could add a couple more $1 million to it. I mean, how can we make an informed decision based when we don't have all the numbers yet here? Well, how are we going to move forward? I mean,
I think some of the numbers are in here, because actually the exact thing, the boilers are included in here.
Are the boiler replacement, you said you haven't finished looking at the
I don't think you saw this thing. It's got everything in it.
Well, this is, but you said this is not in here. All of this is not in here.
That is correct. The report we gave you was strictly answer the question from 2 weeks ago.
Right.
Was on the organization of your academics programs.
He has the ITBC.
So the ITBC.
What's the total cost of this?
It's right on here.
It's not added up.
Here, yes, it is.
Well, in each section it is.
Each section is.
But that's just those are individual cost items. No one is promoting that we would be doing all that work in a single capital project.
Correct.
Part of the process is creating the long-term plan to achieve all of the items that are in those lists, but I don't see it being doable as a part of a single project.
I think, Mike, there's a lot of flexibility.
Well, I mean, this one section is $24 million. And, I mean, this time we're going out for a CAP project. We're not looking at a $10 million CAP project this year, are we? Or are we? That's the question.
We have not determined what this capital project's maximum would be yet. We're just starting to do that process, but certainly understanding where our grade level configuration and our programs are certainly helps us move along. My recommendation in option 2 is that what this allows us to do over time is it allows us to rein in on the use of GLP and open up a wing for possible wraparound daycare, because it's hurting our pre-K right now that our kids don't all come because parents work during the day and can't pick up their kids halfway through the day. That we could possibly lease more space. That if in fact over time, with the census that occurs between the town and the school, we can determine in the next 5 to 10 years that there is or is not growth, that we can start to phase out the use of GLP over time and separate from cogen and do it in a slow and a smart way. One of the things that we learned in all this, and Mike actually has the figures in front of him, is the last time that there was a huge conversation about closing GLP, it was only closed from 1987 until 1990. What we don't want to do is to do that again. So we want to be really smart about the decision that we make. It doesn't mean that 10 years from now, when we know more about what's happening in the population of Eden, that GLP might not close. But for right now, what it allows us to do is to have swing space while we're working on construction, to not spend so much money at the elementary school to load a pre-K or a K-4 when we need so many of those things done that you just pointed out. This district hasn't done a lot of general maintenance in the last 10 years. And so we need to focus on a lot of that along with this. My recommendation on option 2 gives the Board of Education now and the Board of Education in the future as much flexibility moving forward as it may need to make some really tough decisions if enrollment doesn't change.
May I ask why, and I missed the meetings and I apologize for that, but with the options that are presented to us here, why would option 3 not be one that we were considering? Because more money in upgrading the elementary, to me, would be common sense rather than not, that's really not a lot of upgrades with option 2. So, I mean, this is not, we're not paying for it right now, so this is over a long period of time. I'm just wondering, was there a reason why 3 was not on the table?
I can speak or you can speak. 3 was on the table. Mark, do you want to talk about 3?
Yeah, do you?
Well, it just had to do with the use of the space.
Well, and what you'll see if you go into the deeper sections on this one is that putting in K-5, there's 2 separate things that happen. Is you separate out pre-K. And so programmatically, they're left alone. Okay, so we have to do something programmatically with them. But second to that one too is that we load the elementary school to such an extent that if we do grow, because you're at K-5, it's going to start there. My feeling is that if Eden grows in terms of student population, it's going to start at the younger grades. So it loads up more grades at elementary school and makes it full to beyond capacity right now. That doesn't mean that that'll be the case 3 or 4 years from now, but right now it does, because you still have grades at 3, 4, 5 that are still in the hundreds, whereas GLP is smaller.
But in reality, I mean, this like wouldn't switch. You'd have to do all them renovations. It would wouldn't switch by September. You know, as far as kindergarten going up there.
Because this wouldn't
Up to
start
the
in
elementary?
2017. Yeah.
Yeah, and our enrollment is going down, down, down. So I guess that's...
The projections in 2017 is that you would still be loaded to capacity at K-5.
Okay.
Okay. With no room to grow. And I think that for me, when I first came 2 years ago, this is what I heard over and over and over again. We closed GLP in the past for 3 years. Why did we do that?
Oh, well,
And
this one isn't closing the GLP.
No, I understand that, but there's a cost in closing the pieces of GLP that are there, because you're really only keeping pre-K there. And there's a programmatic difference, too, for pre-K students to be in a building where there are other students than all by themselves. And we all know in education that when you change buildings with students, that there's some regression that occurs. And so, our feeling in looking at all of these options is that the flexibility to get to option that you're speaking about can happen over time as opposed to all at once. We have a finite amount of money to spend. That's all we have. Although I can understand what you're asking. Why would you spend the money fixing it? If we're going to lease or sell the space, we really have to do some renovation on it anyways.
You know, Sandy, to clarify what you're saying also is that, Patty, you might be looking for this, is when you do a capital project like this, it's not for 1 year.
Right,
This is
I understand
for
that.
10 years, and when we're going to prioritize and make what's important, we're going to pick it out of the list. And it's a long-term commitment. It's not, and we haven't done anything at all to the buildings in the last 10, 12 years. Absolutely no maintenance. So a lot of this is...
Well, some of this stuff doesn't address repair issues. So that's still to take into account. So that 10 million could grow to, say, 17 million. And that 17 million could go to 20, and the 20 could grow
But
to...
Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it going to be flexible that we're going to make a commitment to what we're going to be doing, and we're going to have estimates, and we're going to have, don't we have to put this out to bid also?
Tom, do you want to speak to that?
Yes,
How do you determine the project?
Right now, we are still at the very conceptual level. Does one of these options make sense as a plan to start working over the next 5 to 10 years? You'll notice the options 2, 3, 4 go in a progression. You only would be spending at Eden Elementary with option 2, $2.4 million. To help you make this transition. If your enrollment drops, then it's a whole other ballgame in 5 years or in 10 years. You can make more decisions at that point without having to spend $9.6 million at Eden Elementary. So the process is, what we're looking for is we're looking for you as a board, give us a direction of programmatically where you think things should be for the next 5 years, so that we can fill in then and say, okay, it's option 2 is on the table. Option 2 is 10.1 million. What do we have to spend? Not 10.1 million. What do we have to spend in this first referendum that we may not have to spend money on pre-K rooms, but we may have to in the K rooms. So we will go through that, the administration and the committee. We will go through all of this and work this down, and maybe the 10 million becomes 3 million in the first referendum.
Because they cross over.
Because things cross over, but we also have boilers and pipe and wire and IT to consider. So we will, over the next actually it's 10 weeks, we just talked about this, is we by the end of May really need to have this finished. If we have anything that impacts seeker, we need to start the seeker process in June. That's all on a timeline. So we over the next 10 weeks, we will be doing estimates, we'll be doing consolidations, we will be taking all of the building condition items. We'll say, okay, this roof needs to be repaired over here. Does that make sense, Dave? Is this your first priority? The committee says yes. Great, then that roof is in the project. We will go through and come back and make a recommendation also coincides with the financial plan, all right? If our financial advisors say you can do so much, okay, and you would have a tax neutral type of project, that's great, let's consider that. If there is something else in the program that you would like to look at that says, here is something else that is, might cost a little bit more money, and you would want to put out something in front of the voters that might be a tax impact, then we can talk about that too. Campus certainly isn't promoting anything. We're here, and I don't think Young and Wright is either. We're here, do the investigations for you, put the information in front of you, get your financial plan, work that everything works together over the next 10 weeks, and bring you back a recommendation of what might make sense in a capital project. The board, we may have to have a workshop. The board may say, no, I want 3 options with this. Can we get us option 1, 2, and 3 on how these would blend together? Okay, that's what we do. We study those type of things. What we're doing now is establishing a baseline, and we really need to know which is going to be the first on the academic, because it sets everything else.
On average, how often does a school district go out for capital projects? Because I mean, if we look at this, and if we're looking for a small chunk, is it every year, every 2 years, every 4 or 5 years?
The State Education Department has a recommendation, and I can't remember the exact percentage off the top of my head, but they have a percentage of what they call your replacement cost value that they recommend is spent on these types of things every 5 years. One of the reasons that they do their 5-year plan and their building condition survey every 5 years is to start to get schools thinking about that long-term plan and make sure that they're making those kind of commitments to their buildings. Too many of the failures that occur in schools because of this kind of neglect are the things that come back on the State Education Department as emergency projects. And those have a higher cost to the state and to the taxpayers. If a roof fails or a boiler fails in the middle of a winter like we just had, those kind of things, they frown on that. So their recommendation is a certain percentage of your replacement costs is allocated to taking care of these buildings every 5 years.
And so when was the last major capital project that we actually did? Because when I was looking through the booklet for our committee thing,
2005.
I mean, Dwight Eisenhower was president. When, I mean, literally 55%, 50% of the stuff in there was the last time
And
they
which
ever touched
teacher
it.
did you learn that from?
Keen.
In our budget school, 2005 Eisenhower.
I'm not kidding.
I'd also like to make another comment about, Sandy and I went down to the school board convention, and we sat in on one of the talks, and there was a school there that actually had a 10-year plan, and they had specifically what they're going to do every year. And I'd like to see Eden do something like that to keep the school maintained on and don't get caught off guard. I think this is a great idea. And Sean, for you, one more thing. Where does the bus garage fit in? Because that's which one does the bus garage fit in?
Well, and there's a lot of there's work that you saw at the presentation on Saturday that's identified for the bus garage, but that conversation had come up at one point also, that the bus garage in itself is possibly inadequate, spatially.
And in a bad location.
But also location-wise. And so this, many of the things that you found in there from the bus garage were things that will, I would say, again, as you're looking at your plan, keep it operational so that it can keep repairing buses until a longer-term solution is discovered. So.
It will not be a surprise to me if over the course of the next 10 years you see regional transportation hubs. It just won't be a surprise.
One of my concerns, well, not a concern, I know what I'm going to say here is going to blow up.
Then don't say it.
No, I mean, if we're looking 5 years, 10 years out, and as the rally was going on tonight about the GEA, and if there is no reduction from that or the rescinding of that proposal, I mean, it's putting all the districts in a world of hurt financially, and the students, of course, and everyone else involved. But, the governor's gone out and said that he's looking for, consolidation of school districts. We were talking about it earlier at the BAT. 5 to 10 years out, when we're looking at these plans, I mean, we might not be the same. You know, we could be Eden North Collins, or Eden Hamburg, or Eden, you know, Lakeshore. And it's not because we want it that way. It might be forced upon us by the state government. You know, just as I throw it out there. I mean,
You know what, Mike? We don't have to spend $24 million this year.
oh, I know.
We can take our time, and we only have so much money. So we can only spend so much money. And the way that they've spent their time and prioritized this is wonderful. And we need this. And
I mean, if we keep delaying this, I mean...
I don't want to delay it. I'm just, it's hard to rationalize.
No, I get what you're
this
saying.
is $10 million. It's not $10,000. This is a lot.
But this is what's
taxpayers.
happened with GLP. It's constantly
You
being
sit there
delayed.
and say, okay,
Sandy,
it's
how much
not
gets- how much
tax money,
aid do we
neutral
get?
Budget. It is.
But we don't know yet. They
We
were
don't know
talking
that.
that it could be you were talking that once we go through the financial part of this, we can see how much we can spend, and it could be tax neutral.
It could be, but to answer her question of what our aid ratio is right now, we're a little, just slightly over 80%.
So let me
right
share
now.
with you what could make a difference in option 2. So option 2 right now would be the ideal world, okay? This is fixing every sink that doesn't work in every building's bathroom. The other day I was in a bathroom where 4 sinks did not work, and I went to the 5th sink and finally found some water. It would be perhaps one of my pet peeves, fixing the graffiti in the bathroom at the main entrance here, which certainly isn't a health and safety issue, but every phonetic word I know is a 4-letter word, so that means that every first grader can read it. But those are the priorities that we have to decide on as we look at this. So as I hear you say, Mike, that 10 million could become 17, I also say it could become 2. Because perhaps the priority isn't to fix the graffiti in that bathroom, or it isn't to fix those toilets, because we really have to fix the roof. What I know in my 2 years here is that the current configuration of 7 through 12 programmatically does not work, and that I am more committed to a 6 through 12 model. And in finding that 6 through 12 model, I can find it the most inexpensively and the most flexibly in option 2. So that's really my focus.
All right.
There's a motion.
Anyone else? All right, all in favor? Aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much. Next step.
The next step will be working with and through the ITBC committee and the APES committee, whereas we are looking to input back from the 2 committees on what they see and what we've seen, so we have a synopsis of that, of what, and then we need to start working through what makes sense with priorities. And we're still investigating, we're still capturing, and we will be doing reports and working through, and also I think that we have a meeting next week, and
24th.
the 24th, and then on the 7th of April, we talked about getting together of where we are, big picture.
So a special board meeting on April 7th, yes. For most, if not everybody sitting at this table, this is a really new process, especially when we know that the items that we're looking at far outnumber what we can go out for capital projects. So I appreciate you backing up, taking the time, walking us through it, and being patient with the questions that we ask, because clearly I don't think anything this size has been done since 2005, so nobody on this board has been through it. And so I really appreciate that a lot. Okay? All right. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Thank you for your help.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Do you have it?
Who's reading?
Okay, request to withdraw specific items from consensus items. Any requests? Okay, I move that the following consensus items be approved as listed in the administrative memorandum A through M.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Okay, 2-minute public statements. Anybody wish to make a statement?
Going once. Twice.
All right, new business. Appointments. I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Mrs. Rita Sturr, head inspector, Mrs. Bonnie Cordell, Mrs. Karen Cornell, Mrs. Barbara Caffrey, and Mrs. Marion Fellon be appointed as inspectors for the annual meeting and budget vote on May 19, 2015, at a rate of $13.40 per hour, and further authorize the district clerk to fill any vacancies in these positions which may occur prior to May 19, 2015, with individuals from the Board of Elections inspector personnel list.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Sarah Keefe be recalled as a teacher aide effective February 10th, 2015.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, a substitute aide position for 1 full day effective March 13th, 2015 to assist with a special needs student be created, and Sandra Pintabona be approved to fill the position. This is a 1-day appointment.
Second.
Discussion?
Yeah.
Don't you want to know why you have to do this for 1 day?
Okay, basically the reason is there's no aid position for her to actually be in, and they need an aid for a day. So you basically need to create the position for 1 day, allow her to come in for the need for, and then to be able to pay her. We can't pay her if she's in even for 1 day if there's not a position to
So she's
pay her.
only going to work 1 day?
One day?
If in the future they need someone, do we have to do this again?
Yes.
Unless you want us to appoint people without your approval.
No, I'm just. You would think that, okay.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Should we congratulate her on her 1 day? Congratulations.
Okay, I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the legal notice for the annual district meeting and vote be approved as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
Yes, Barb, could you just put a little detail to that? Like, when does it go in the paper?
March 27th, I send it in. It will be in the Hamburg Sun April 2nd.
So April 2nd in the Hamburg Sun.
Right, and it will also go into the Springville Journal because those are the 2 official newspapers of the district.
And the Springville Journal.
Right.
And it will not say the budget amount at that point.
No, it will not say the budget amount because you haven't decided on a budget amount, but it will be also in another 3 times in April.
3 times in both of those papers in April.
A total of 4 times. One might be the beginning of May.
It's not in the Penny Saver
Not in the-
because it's not one of our formal papers.
It has to be 2 paid subscription papers.
Will it be up on our website?
Sure.
Okay, that'd be awesome. That's a great
Everything's
answer.
on the website.
Everything goes on the website.
As long as you buy the paper, you can
That's
see
right.
it.
If you see the paper, you can get the website.
Barb, do we have a list of, is this the candidates for, that are up?
I can't see what's on your screen.
No,
Oh.
we're just
That would be
talking
for
about
both
the
these.
annual vote notice.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, so no, not that
You're
yet.
on the next one.
Yeah.
Am I? Okay, yeah, maybe. Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
Okay, I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the following individuals be nominated for the BOCES Board of Education. Now, these first 4 are incumbents, Gary DeLillis, Thomas Fenton, Nancy Rankins, and Nancy Stack. And the 5th would be new. It's Mr. David Nielsen from Orchard Park Board of Education.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries.
I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Wind Ensemble and Orchestra overnight field trip to Cleveland, Ohio, May 15th to 18th, 2015 be approved.
Second.
Discussion?
It says concert band.
It was changed, it was incorrectly put on there.
All in favor? Aye. Oh,
I just wanted to, we did get the insurance that's insuring these kids if there's an accident or?
Yep,
Okay.
they're
All right.
insured for us. Yep.
Okay, yep, thanks.
All right. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the FBLA overnight field trip to Rochester, New York to attend the State Leadership Conference, April 15th through 17th, 2015, be approved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
I move that,
Yes, they drive. They, not only do they drive, but they fundraise to pay for the entire trip themselves,
The
too.
trip is at St. Paul, Minnesota.
Do you want to drive with them?
Oh, are you on the next one?
Yeah, on the
Oh,
next
am I on the
one.
next one? I'm sorry.
They're
Because
going
I
to
was going to say
Rochester.
Rochester's not really that far. That's okay. That's okay.
It does take a long time.
No, but they don't drive the chopper, so I'll take on the next one with you. But
okay, I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Technology Club overnight field trip to the Donnie Smith Chopper Challenge in St. Paul, Minnesota, March 26th through the 30th, 2015, be approved.
Second.
Discussion?
they go every year. They go every year.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know what route they take, but they go every year.
Do they drive?
They drive and they take a big
Trailer?
trailer with the choppers in it, and they always win awards. They can come and show you after if you'd like.
Oh, we'd like that.
That would be nice, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that.
And you get to ride on the chopper, too. So bring your helmet.
And they generally get written up in a few magazines for what they do. They did last year.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the Model UN overnight field trip to the St. Bonaventure Model UN competition, March 20th and 21st, 2015, be approved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the attached resolution be approved authorizing Eden Central School District to participate with other school districts in Erie 2 BOCES in the joint bidding of items listed in the attachment.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, Eden Elementary Library books as presented be accessed and disposed of as the district deems necessary.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
I move that upon the recommendation of the superintendent, the 2014-2015 appropriations be increased by $1,727.71 to $26,471,458.75 to account for increased revenues.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries.
Okay, information and proposals, business report.
Okay, so in terms of the budget, we already had our budget advisory team meeting, but what we did want to come back to was there was a question regarding athletics and just a little bit more in terms of clarification. We had said we wanted to put that off to the end until Marissa was here, who might be able to speak a little more intelligently than anyone else at the table. So if we could actually go back to that, and Mike, can you repeat what the question was?
So why don't we just get Marissa up here? So come on up, Marissa. Come on, Marissa. She knew this was coming, so.
I can tell by the look on her face when you mentioned her name.
Nothing bad, just clarification questions.
One of the questions about possibly eliminating the JV groups. Is there a list of which JV groups will be eliminated?
The proposal is for JV girls field hockey, JV girls soccer, JV boys soccer, JV girls volleyball, JV boys volleyball, modified football, JV girls basketball, JV boys basketball, JV softball, JV baseball, JV girls lacrosse, and JV boys lacrosse.
So which ones are not?
Which ones are left, more like now?
There's no JV sports left.
None at all.
We are wiping out the entire JV program.
Okay, because
I thought there were
I
some.
thought there were a couple that were staying. Okay, my area then.
Okay, and then that's a rough savings of
It is
51.
across the board a rough savings of about 50,000. The thing you need to understand with the two lacrosse programs is there will be no savings with the lacrosse programs because we would now pick up funding of the modified lacrosse. So most of our team sports would be left with two levels. They would have a modified level and a varsity level.
The modified level, unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly what the modified level is going to look like. I've talked about it the past couple of years, and I pretty much have some smaller schools on board for certain sports for a 7, 8, 9 modified model, but there will still possibly be some sports that are 7, 8 model. I won't have an answer for that until probably May or June. Their softball, baseball is in 5 school districts right now. Is doing a 7, 8, 9 modified model. There are some districts interested in doing it for girls soccer next year, a 7, 8, 9 model. Basketball, they're not touching. They are interested in it for volleyball for the girls, not for the boys. I have asked ECIC to consider the possibility of allowing those teams with 7, 8, 9 to compete against 7, 8. It is a lengthy process that I'm going to with a number of petitions, but it's one that I'm still pursuing. That I think I'll have more information once we see how this current spring goes with some of our 7, 8, 9 teams playing other 7, 8 teams.
So, Marissa, last year when you came to this board with this model, there weren't any other schools that were doing this. And then if I recall correctly, tell me if I'm wrong, September came and the team started, and then all of a sudden, other school districts were saying they wanted to do it.
Our Eden is making these cuts because of budget. This is purely a budget cut. I need everybody to understand that. The other districts are doing it for enrollment. So what they are doing is they are saying we are going to fund all our sports, even though they had 10 kids on it last year and they had to cancel it. And then come the week of tryouts, August 18th, they see that their numbers are low. We set our schedule. Our schedules were set in June. They start their team, and then 2 weeks later, they call and say they have to cancel it. So we finally have a couple, JFK, Lackawanna, Tonawanda, sort of, Cleve Hill for some of them, that are saying, you know what, let's start being proactive. I know I couldn't fund I couldn't field a soccer team last year. I'm not going to be able to field a soccer team this year. So what are your options for soccer? So I'm trying to see if they would also be proactive towards other sports and not just the few that they have. And that's something that I'm taking to ECICs right now. I need it. The reason that it's so tough to do it is because we have bylaws that we have to follow, not only for the state, but we also have bylaws for the section and bylaws for ECIC. So I need the entire bylaws for modified changed.
Why didn't we look at modified instead of JV? I know we discussed this last year.
That is a personal agreement or a personal decision by myself. I live, breathe, and eat athletics. I've coached a number of sports here. I've watched other school districts, Lackawanna, Cleve Hill, say we're going to wipe out our modified program and we're only going to have a JV varsity. And I've watched those school districts go from championship teams to down bottom feeders. I've watched it for several of their sports, mostly in our division. They're taking 7th and 8th graders and not having them touch a ball until they get to 9th grade. You've lost those kids. You will not get them back. New York State has recently, as of the last 2 months, changed selective classification. That is the test that New York State mandates that a 7th or 8th grader must pass to move up to the 9th grade, to the JV or varsity level. They just made it 100 times harder. We are still trying to fight it in SED, but it's not working. So coming this fall, it will be pretty much impossible for a 7th or 8th grade athlete to pass this test. And if they are of small stature and do not get a 10 or 5 from our medical chief medical officer, they have no chance of playing a JV or varsity sport. So now I just even further decreased my numbers of kids that could play a JV or varsity. I think I can get the most athletes, or touch the most kids doing the modified varsity level, whether it be a 7-8, 9-12, or 7-8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I've looked at current rosters, I've looked at current tryout rosters, I've looked at past tryout rosters, and to see where the least amount of kids would be touched. And by touched, I mean cut.
Is this something that we can, I know we're sharing services with North Collinsville football. I mean, is this something that we can work with them to share
It
prepare
isn't-
people for JV sports?
It's a tricky situation. It's definitely one that could be looked at, but the problem is you have to have both teams both school districts on agreement. I have reached out to North Collins for a couple other teams, and they weren't interested. And if you remember correctly with football, it was a huge struggle for about 4 years to get them to agree to football because they were worried that their soccer numbers would go down. Their soccer numbers have in fact gone down, and they too have looked at cutting certain sports. When I approached them about bowling this year, they liked their club bowling team. Some of their parts are very worried about losing their identity. With a merger of JV sports, you also run into, and I guess I'm not trying to be negative, but if you're an Eden coach and you have your Eden kids and then you have your North Collins kids and you're coaching them for JV and you know that you're not going to have those kids next year because now they're going to North Collins varsity, it's a tricky situation to run into. As far as merging them for varsity sports, it's extremely complicated because now you have to use your beds numbers and we end up moving up into classifications. I can tell you straight out, if the classification numbers for North Collins were higher, I would not look at merging for football because it would put us up into an A school. We can't compete at an A school for any of our sports. I can't compete in a Hamburg or a Williamsville or a Lancaster. So it really, I'm looking at how I can still be the competitive powerhouse that I think Eden Athletics is, and I truly believe that this is the best option. I ask, and again I say I, because like I said, this is a program that I eat, sleep, breathe. I know you guys have a number of issues that you're dealing with. I think of athletics day in, day out. It's not what I want to do, but I was put in charge with cutting 40 to 50,000. This is all I have left. I asked that we try this model for a year, and if it doesn't work, then I was wrong and we fix it. I have nowhere else to come up with that money. And I think this is the best way to still get the most out of our kids and still be this successful.
You had mentioned modified football is cut?
I would do modified football only because, again, I went after every program. Every program would now be touched either last year or this year. Little Loop football offers an age group that would be able to house our modified kids. So I'd rather have the modified kids play modified Little Loop and then be able to come for JV varsity Eden.
Okay.
That was the only program that I looked at for that.
Okay.
Yep. Marissa, what is your budget right now?
My budget right now,
what I remember is like 300 or 350 last year.
It was 300,000 last year without stipends. Now I'm down to I was down to 280 last year. I think I'm around 230 if this goes through. I will tell you after this year I have nothing left.
Speaking of Little Loop, I mean, what's the chances of us working with Eden Rec about, offering soccer and baseball and stuff for a modified level to keep the JV? Is that an option, or?
It's always an option. It comes down, I guess I would say, competitiveness. I was a rec coach myself, and I'm not putting rec down at all. Please understand that. But it comes down to the competitiveness and just that I know from coaching basketball. I look at my own teams and coaching softball. I promote my softball kids playing travel league. Starting out little playing rec, but by the time they get up into high school ball, I want them in a serious competitive league. To me, Little Loop football, seeing it, being there is very competitive. So I personally prefer that they play a modified level, and JV, I don't know how to answer that, I guess. I look at rec as rec. I look at rec as rec, and I know that for basketball, I prefer my kids in AAU or travel over the summer than a town rec. We'll do a town rec on the side, but it's like an extra practice. And again, I know I'm saying it wrong and probably going to tick off a lot of people that do rec, but rec is great for the kids before they get to high school. They need it. They definitely need it. 7th and 8th grade, I prefer to have structured, modified activities that I can teach them the stuff that I want them to have by the time they get to me.
for Marissa.
Sandy, you had mentioned that perhaps this summer we would do a study of the athletic program in terms of curriculum and the numbers that we have. And
I anticipate that happening in a number of different areas, so I'm really glad you brought it up.
So that sounds more strategic to me than hacking off all JV sports with a meat cleaver. And I'd like to think about, I think we should think about keeping everything for now until we go through that more strategic process of looking at what sports it makes sense to keep separate from the budget. And then, because there'll be some savings there, even though the decisions are not budgetary, they're going to be more strategic. Because at that point, we may regret some of these decisions that we made 2 or 3 months before that. So I think it makes more sense to do the strategic study first, try to keep what we have for now, go through that process this summer, and do it that way.
She did say it was only a 1-year trial period as far as that goes. I mean, if she's wrong, she's wrong. If she's right, giddy up.
You lose them.
We lose options, is what we lose.
Especially for your small teams, like, you know, a basketball team, man, you can only field, what, 12 players? 5 only run at a time? It's not like football where you have, you know, 12, hopefully 12 offense, 12 defense, and special teams and so forth. So, it's tougher for the smaller group of kids. You know, they're just going to lose interest. Or if they're going to move up to varsity, which has a, you know, very small team already, you can't jam all the ninth and 10th onto that team. They won't ever play. They'll never make the team. So they'll just lose out and never play varsity. So your small clubs, your small sports teams are going to be the ones that suffer. And, you know, you're going to lose them on modified. If you take modified out, you'll lose them on JV of the small teams.
Marissa, where'd you go?
She's sitting back down.
Do you want to come back up? Because you've done that study as well. I've made her very busy.
As far as the roster sizes, I mean, I definitely know, for me, the roster, you are right. You could look at it of what we offer in the fall compared to what we offer in the winter. We don't offer anything in the winter. I'm put in a tricky situation, number one, because I am a coach. I am a coach of a winter sport and a spring sport, so I looked at everybody's program across the board. Mr. Campbell brings up a great point of, I'm not exactly sure what the younger students want, which is why we were going to pull the kids. I do know from other districts that have said they've cut a program straight out. They've cut a couple programs straight out, and by program I mean the modified JV and varsity team for a certain sport, and they said they wish they didn't do that because they lost those kids and they'll never get them back. I can sit here and say, let's cut field hockey and football together to save a soccer program. Let's try it for a year. I will never get those kids back. So that was kind of why I looked at the JV level that way, to kind of keep those kids. You are right. To have a 9th grader up on a varsity team for a basketball team, they probably won't come off the bench. I look at the bigger school districts, though, in Orchard Park, who, you know, it's known as the University of Orchard Park for football. Those 11th graders, they don't play. They sit the bench and wait for their turn on the 12th grade team, on the varsity team. Lake Shore had 140 kids try out for varsity track this year. They have to cut 60 of them, and not all of them are going to compete. I don't want to do this, but I can't stand up here as an educator and say save athletics, but cut curriculum. So I just tell you, as you have said before, we've said it a number of times, Eden has had a number of luxuries that we've been able to have for a number of years, and we're at the point that we can't. And I think offering the sports that we do at the 3 levels is a luxury that we've had. We've had the luxury of all kids try out and pretty much all kids make it, and we can't do that anymore. We will have kids that will get cut. We will have kids sitting on the bench. If the coach does a great job and establishes the program the way that they want it, they'll know, those 7th graders know, I'm a role player this year, but next year's my year. And establish it. Most of us, we've been doing that with our teams as far as grade doesn't matter. The best kids play. We've started 8th graders on a varsity team. We've started 9th graders on a varsity team. So I don't think that's going to come to anything new, except the number of kids you will cut will increase.
Marissa, there's a school district south of us that cut their JV program and they actually have more kids that went out for the program, and that's Gowanda. Do you know why that is? Maybe you could find out. Okay.
I know that when I talked to Katie Shelley from North Collins, she said a number of the smaller schools that way, they are starting to do the 7, 8, 9 for some of theirs. Again, I don't know all that information because they don't attend our ECIC meetings because they're not ECIC, and we don't typically play them. I think it's a trend you're going to start seeing. I'm kind of excited in a way that people are starting to get on board with it because, again, I don't believe in cutting a program because Liz loves tennis. I don't know anything about tennis. Who am I to say that we shouldn't have it? Who am I to say Liz loves cheerleading? Who am I to say that we shouldn't have cheerleading but we should have basketball? I'd rather give more options but less teams and make it work. I have wonderful coaches who they didn't like the news, but they understood it and they're willing to figure it out and work on it.
I have a question. Could there be like the modified teams and then the varsity teams, and then could there be like an option to have like a group go out and make like a club practice team where they go out and like a basketball team just goes out and practice?
You would need the advisor. Okay. You would need a club advisor, and that would have to be a paid position.
But it's certainly worthy of a conversation.
I will tell you that I've had a number of coaches already contact me on, okay, well, give me the price that it would be for me to run that JV program. Because they want to know what it is, and they could put it out to their parents that way. But that is a good conversation.
Cool.
You would just need that adult advisor.
Yeah, I got you.
Good question. Did that answer it? I don't know if that answered your question.
Just looking at options.
Okay. I understand options. I've looked at a ton of them. Okay.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa.
Okay, and aside from the athletics program, what we looked at is, again, we still have a couple more weeks prior to the board adoption date. Just to let everyone know, we're looking at 2 different potentials for board adoption dates. The first is April 7th, which is our next meeting, and then the one after that would be April 21st. One way or the other, this board that would have to make that adoption decision no later than April 22nd. That is the last possible date.
So get us to April 22nd. What needs to happen between now and then?
Number one, we need to make a decision on the budget cuts of what we looked at the budget advisory team and at the community forum. What would stay, what would go. Probably by April 7th, it would be very close whether or not we have any information on state aid. By April 21st, we might definitely have a clearer picture as to what's going to be happening with the state aid. I don't know if it'll be there for us by April 7th. But knowing that,
even if they adopt a budget on time, we still might not know?
On final aid runs, that is possible. If he adopts a budget on time, we may have a clear picture. But you're really relying on a budget adoption on time.
I am.
Unfortunately, now with Sheldon Silver out of the picture and dysfunction among the 3 men in a room, is now really at this point 5 men in a room.
They need a bigger room.
Well, they have to take more away from us to get the bigger room.
So walk me through this again. It really is my question this time. If the budget is not adopted on time, that does not change by the state, that does not change our obligation to adopt ours by a certain time.
No, so whether we hear about state aid finances by April 22nd, one way or the other, we need to commit to that final number for adoption. If we don't know the state aid numbers, again, we go conservative and say if they've given us nothing, we go with the plan we have. If they come back with more money, then at what time is then what we can do is we'll have more revenue. We won't necessarily have to make the cuts on that side. So what we might want to do is leave a little bit of room there for play. So for instance, we have 1.1 in fund balance and reserves right now. So that's helping to offset some of the cuts, as an example. If we get more money back, we'll just have to look at the various scenarios and say, what happens if we get 100 back? What happens if we get 200 back? What cuts wouldn't go? I'll look at it that way.
So the piece that we've spoken about during our budget advisory team meeting, and then Tom just referenced, is that the community forum and the community forum package that you received during BAT shows that right now, and this was a guess on our part, that the board would be comfortable with a $1.1 million pullout of fund balance and reserves. We had major conversation about this last year, so I don't want to brush over that point and just make the assumption that you're okay with it. But that was our starting point, and we had, again, major conversation about it last year. But we didn't really want to start with that major conversation again without saying, this is where you were last year, is this what you want to do again? So you might not want to do that again. That's a huge conversation for you to be thinking about, and if in fact you don't want to do 1.1 million again, then just let us know where you stand with that.
I know for myself, at this point, I'm comfortable with that, but once we get the state aid numbers back, once the legislature does, or the legislature does what they do, my suggestion, I'm anticipating 150,000, 160.
You said 160.
160, I'll keep it at 160, how's that? That a portion of that goes to restoring some of the cuts that are impacting kids and not.
Okay. That makes sense.
And then a portion goes back to the reserves.
I'd absolutely agree with that. 100%. In fact, I was just about to say the exact same thing. So you might want to put 100 back in the cuts and then the difference going at the reserves or something along those lines. That's exactly what I was going to say.
I would support that also.
If we don't get those numbers back, though, what does that do for us when we do get that number? If we've already adopted the budget, then the state comes late.
No, the budget number will be the budget number. So if we go in right now, worst case scenario, and say we're going to put $100,000 back in cuts, we're committing to spending $100,000 more. So what we would do is, if that doesn't come through with the state, we'd end up using it from fund balance and reserves. I mean, our revenue is our revenue, so we're saying we will fund that.
Okay. Anyone else of the using reserves?
And then the only other dates is on May 5th, we'll have a budget hearing for the community as a whole, and then the vote would be on May 19th. That's it for me.
Just a very brief update from Saturday morning then. We had about 24 people that attended the ITBC, or the Infrastructure, Tech, and Building Condition Survey meeting. Sean Wright, Mike McCarthy, whom we're both here tonight, plus Jeff as an engineer was there, and then there might have been one more engineer there on Saturday morning to walk us through the paperwork of what's coming forward on the building condition survey. Sean or Tom today spoke very briefly about what a building condition survey is, but every 5 years you have to recreate it for SED. The building condition survey that SED requires does not include everything. It only includes some things. We actually asked for a building condition survey that would include more than what SED is asking for, since we haven't done some of this stuff in 10 years. Some of it we didn't want to pay for this year, but we wanted to push it more into next year, or the capital project should have come forward. So there are still some areas that we have not done a building condition survey on. The architects and the architect, Sean Wright, has offered for some tours to occur in some buildings if there are areas that people want to see. So it could be a generator, it could be a boiler, it could be cogen. And priorities are already slated by the condition of some things, but beyond the priorities of the condition of some items on that survey will also be just this district's priority moving forward. So again, we spoke about that a little bit earlier. It might be that the roof takes precedence over the toilets or the sinks that don't work. I mean, that's, I know, very simplistic, but that's, I think that makes sense. We won't do everything. And Barb is actually right in that what we are attempting to build, which is what I was charged with doing by the Board of Education, is a long-term plan over time so that there's phases that occur. So let's say that, let me pick a number. Let's say that we went out for, I'm going to pick something completely outrageous, a $1 million project, okay? That doesn't mean that we wouldn't go out for another one over time, but we would know what that one's supposed to look like. That doesn't mean that there won't be changes over time either. So we need to be thinking long term, because we don't want to backtrack and do something over because we made a wrong mistake.
People talk about emergency.
Well, and Tom is very clear when I say to him, Tom, this is an emergency, and why can't you use the emergency repair reserve? And he says to me, because you should have known it was going to break. Right?
Well, it's not me saying it, the state says
Yeah,
it.
no, but you say it to me. You
Right,
say,
because the state says to us, you should have seen this coming, we will not allow you to use the repair reserve.
therefore, we can't use the reserve, so it has to come out of fund balance. So we have to be very careful of what the useful life is of something and not be too lax on it, because the state's pretty clear on that. That's all I have on that. Oh, I do have one more thing. On the community forum update, all of you should have packets, and I'm not sure if it's up on our website yet, that
Should be.
PowerPoint from Saturday should have been up there on Monday. It's a very, very good presentation. I give Tom a lot of credit, and the people who worked with him on it. Please take a look at what that states if you're in the audience, but everybody at this table has their own copy. And then I really just wanted to extend a huge thank you to everyone on ETA and PTA for organizing the rally for today. You had a wonderful turnout, and the sun was shining, and it wasn't raining, and it was a great job, and I'm sure all your voices were heard. So. Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, anything from the board?
I would like to, maybe, Liz, will you talk about the cheerleading competition at States?
Oh, nice.
That was probably one of the coolest things I've done.
Can you just pull your mic down?
Sorry. I went to the, well, that was weird. Sorry, I'm not used to this. We competed at the state competition in Rochester a few weeks ago, and we took 3rd out of 17 other teams. It was pretty cool. Cheerleading's considered a sport now in New York State, so that's kind of like a big accomplishment because it's always just been a club now. And
the girls were phenomenal.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It was really fun. I don't know.
That's so
definitely like worthwhile, and I'm glad that we were like the first class to be able to do it. Mr. Cervoni staring.
That is memorable, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
this whole challenge to have it become a sport started at least 5 years ago. So to be the first class up.
Is this the first year it became a sport?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. This winter season. Yep.
And not the fall, but the.
Classified under, does Marissa have to deal with that?
Marissa, the question is what do you need to change at Eden because it's now classified as a sport?
Eden has pretty much always treated cheerleading as a sport. We were one of the few schools to do that. So we actually don't have to change anything. So it was a really easy switch to make.
Well, now it's in the budget.
It's always been.
It's always
And is it, what's the senior? Don't you have different ages of cheerleaders all along?
We have JV and varsity. We've always had JV and varsity, but it's always been in the budget.
But you just cut all JV sports.
I cut the programs that had 3. And cheerleading never had a modified JV varsity.
It's 7th through 9th grade.
I cut the
It's all JV.
I cut the teams that had 3 sports.
That's why I said it wasn't every team. I knew there was a reason.
So,
I have to be right.
You're always
It's
right.
bothering me every single
3 levels.
It has.
I did 3. The teams that had 3 levels. So the only JV I really have left is that. Like wrestling wasn't touched because I only have 1 level of wrestling. Swimming wasn't touched. I only have 1 level of swimming. Track
Tennis.
wasn't touched because we tried track last year. Tennis wasn't touched because I only have 1 level of that. Cheerleading was cut before, where we only technically pay the fall varsity advisor. The JV coach in the fall is donated, and then I did not touch the winter JV or varsity cheerleading. Just like lacrosse, they got touched, but we're redistributing the funds so that all the team sports have 2 levels.
Good to know.
Great job. I also would like to thank Carol King and Colleen Cott for inviting me, and they did a great job with that. I was pretty impressed with the amount of people that were out there. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, I move that we enter executive session to discuss staff supervisory organization contract negotiations and the employment history of a particular person.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries.